the amount of times in the past I was going to check. So the last interview I did must have been about 18 months ago, right? And the amount of times I'd be chatting to people and I'd forget to record and it'd be 20 minutes in and I'm like, oh fuck, sorry, press the button.
Yeah, let's just cover everything all over again.
Ah, exactly. It's a nightmare, but no, that's cool, man. Well, fucking before we get cracking, and I'd start talking about it. But I watched that Subterranean this morning.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah,
Nice one.
man. Fucking hell. Like, so it was all dark this morning, and it was all comfy. So I had my desk lamp on in the background, and it was just perfect because inevitably the film. I mean, I'll not go into details. We'll talk about it, but the film's shit hot, man. Like, it's really shit hot.
Oh, thanks very much.
It's fucking banging, man. So I know. I just wanted to we'll cover something. I've got like tons of notes here, man. And the only thing, because I realised obviously you've also got Sair Ane, which I didn't get time
Yeah.
to watch. And also there was
Yes. So it's in a weird place just now because it got bought by a distributor and
right.
they haven't done anything with it. So I signed it away basically and I got paid for for a distribution, agreement. And I think their plan was to put it into like an anthology of other shorts and then try and kind of position that as like you get these horror anthologies that have got like three or four stories to them and they try
Yeah.
and have like an overarching theme. So basically that's what I was told was going to happen, but that was about 2.5 years ago or something like
Yeah.
that. So they told me because I signed an exclusive thing with them that I had to take it off YouTube and stuff. So I've done that. But at some point I'm just going to put it back
Right.
because, people should be able to see it if they want to see it.
So like the saying Goodman and all that kind of stuff, we'll cover all that kind of stuff, but I'm going
Cool.
to also try my best not to ask for advice because you've got like a shit hot portfolio, IMDb, this catalog of stuff, you got stuff on Amazon, so it's all good shit, man. No, it's really impressive to see.
Cheers.
Um,
I've been at this a while, but I mean, I honestly feel like I haven't done anything for sort of 4 or 5 years, and that's because we've been working on Goodman for 4 or 5 years. And although that was like, it's been a really enjoyable and it's been a great journey, and we're really proud of what we've done. Nobody's seen it, because
yeah,
it's still work in progress. So you kind of like you go to these networking things and stuff like that, and you speak to other filmmakers, and I started to feel more and more like an imposter because I haven't released a film in 4 years.
yeah,
So yeah, we really need to get Goodman out because then I'll feel better. We'll feel like we've got something out there.
yeah. I know that feeling 100%. But the thing is, though, as well, like, you're at what is it, the Cannes Film Festival this last year? Is that right?
Yeah, we went there just basically to talk to distributors, talk to sales agents about Goodman, because we this time last year thought we'd be finished it.
Yeah,
We're so close. So we're thinking we will go back this year, maybe with a finished poster, a finished trailer, maybe a sizzle reel or something. Sandy's like maybe a finished cut, and I'm like maybe not. We'll see.
yeah.
We'll see how we go because we're very close to wrapping production. And then after that, I've still got the score, I've still got the VFX, still got, loads of stuff, loads of work.
Mm.
Um,
So, I mean, before diving fully into the Subterranean, I noticed that at the end for the credits that you had an original score on that. I mean, how is that music you're constructing yourself?
yeah. Um, so for Superterranean, I kind of, there was a guy I was talking to about doing the score, and he was asking for like ideas on what I wanted, and I was sending him stuff that I did on piano and stuff that I'd kind of I got a violin, and I was kind of messing around with that, making screechy noises and that with the
Mm.
strings. And I sent stuff to him to say, this is the kind of atmosphere I'm looking for. And eventually he was just like, you should just use that because it sounds good to me, and it goes with the visuals that you're creating. So eventually, like I had no intention when I started making the film that I was going to do the score, but I eventually decided I was going to give it a crack. And for some things, it was easy, but other things, it was quite like it was really new territory for me. Doing anything that wasn't just kind of like a melodic, almost like a song, because
Mm.
that's all I'd done in the past was just tinkered around with melodies and tinkered around with sort of tunes. But as soon as you think, right, I need to create like an upbeat or a thrilling kind of atmosphere here, or I need to, make it tense. Like I have no idea how to do that because I've never done anything like that in, you know, 20, 30 years of playing guitar or piano.
The thing is, because
But
it's like
that,
when
that
I'm,
was the score I did enjoy doing, and it was all for Superterranean. It was all organic instruments. It was all real piano, real guitar, real violin. The only thing that was, I think, there was like an organ in it that was on a keyboard. But other than that, everything was, recorded with mics and stuff, and then just put together. So I got a lot out of it. But as things have progressed with Sair Ane and with Gudeman, I've been doing a lot of like stuff with virtual instrument libraries and things like that, and it sounds so much better because it's like it's these are professional musicians who are playing in professional recording studios, and you get the kind of the library, and you can just play the notes and make your song as if you've got like a chamber orchestra or a symphony orchestra or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm so much happier with the stuff I'm producing now than I was with the Superterranean soundtrack. But as a first go at it, I was pretty happy at the time.
Ah, I mean, it was fucking shit hot, man. Like, I'm no joking. Like, I was sitting watching it this morning, and it's just, it was, I mean, the scenery, the way that's, I've no idea, obviously, who did the cinematography style stuff and how you're capturing scenery, or even how you did, like, location scouting. But fucking hell, man. Like,
Yeah,
I was thinking this when I was watching it. Like, you could essentially, if you put, like, an emotive soundtrack just on top of the Scottish scenery, that's a film just with it. Because it's
yeah,
really bizarre to see that you could have, like, this emotional response based on a landscape. It's really weird.
yeah, yeah. Well, the part of the idea behind that film was always that the Bothy and the landscape around the Bothy to a certain extent were like characters in the film.
Mm,
And I wanted that whole space that the guy is occupying, I wanted that to feel like it was playing a part in the events, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
And it was like not so much speaking to him or anything, but just there was a presence that came from where he was. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the music as well. But it was like in terms of the shooting. So it was a tiny crew. There was about 5 or 6 people involved altogether, but never at the same time. It was usually me and someone else, and if I was lucky, like a third person.
Mm.
And we would just work together. So I tended to set the shots up, and then like my brother who was with me for quite a lot of the shooting, he I would set the shots up, and I would basically like use him as my stand-in, and I would kind of get the focus right and everything, get the composition. I'd be happy with it, and then we'd swap places, and I'd
Right.
take his glasses off him because he wore glasses, so that's what I'd put on for the character that had the glasses on. And every time he would then get behind the camera, he couldn't really see, so I would be sitting in a slightly different place, and if it was out of focus, that was my fault, not his,
Mm.
because he's just like pressing record and kind of looking at the back of the screen. But it was that kind of film where there was so few of us, and everybody was doing a little bit of everything. So different people working the camera, different people working sound equipment, and just whoever was available. But it was such a small environment to shoot. You couldn't have more than about 3 people in that room anyway.
Mm.
Um, so even if I'd had a big crew, they just wouldn't have fitted in the bothy.
So
So.
what was the recording timeline? Like, how did you do something like? 'Cause I was thinking this at the time. Like would you just go out and like sacrifice a week, like take a week off work, and then you just a week of shooting, or what would you do?
I wish.
Yeah, yeah.
What happened with that was I'd always kind of intended to shoot stuff on weekends, and like at that point, I think because it was the first feature film I did, I didn't really have the confidence to take a big block of time off and plow a load of money into it either. I just sort of thought if I just go up and shoot something at the weekend, if it looks good, we'll keep going and we'll go out the weekend after and so on and so forth. So by the time I decided I was ready to start, it was like April 2016, I think. And Dave and I went out to shoot the exterior stuff at Cool Bothy, which is way up near Dalwhinnie. And it took us it's like 5 miles of cycling to get to this bothy.
Right.
And we spent a day shooting outside the bothy and then came back. And I think after that, I think pretty much the next week we were up into the interior bothy. So that was in a totally different place. That was in a place called Strathdon. And it was a guy who had it was on Airbnb, the interior. And he had this thing that he called his bothy, but it was actually just like a stable, I think it was, on his land, and it had power and it had a toilet and stuff. So we were like, that's what we need. We don't want to go in the middle of nowhere and shoot inside a bothy for a week or whatever with no toilet and no way to charge batteries. So we went up there and we totally stripped it back because he'd made this kind of really cozy bothy with like, duvets and blankets and sheepskin and stuff like that. So we took everything out and put it in the barn next door, kind of dressed it down a bit, took all the furniture out. And we shot in there for I think 3 nights, just over like 4 days. And then we went away, and the very next week we shot the scene, the very well, like the end scene with his kind of hair getting cut and stuff. And then I just left it for ages because, as far as I was concerned, I had about a third of the film in the can. So I started editing it and started kind of looking at it and just relaxed. I was just like, right, okay, everything's underway. And by the time I came to actually organize the next shoot, it was like 6, 7 months later or something. So it was like November of that year. So it was about 6 months since we'd been in, and we were, in fact, 9 months since we'd been in, and we were filming the other half of those scenes in the bothy. So we did another 3 nights in the bothy, basically filming all the reverse angles. So every time the camera goes from one angle to the second angle, that's like 9 months apart.
Fucking hell, that's cool.
But that's just the way we did it. And
Yeah.
then after that, there was about another 6 months, I think, just to shoot stuff, just to tidy up, basically. So it took place over quite a long period of time. And I'd spent 2 years growing my hair and everything. I'd written the thing. So it was like 4 years altogether before I got to the end. I thought, right, we've got a film here.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're working on this project and you're growing your hair and your beard, and folk are like, my man's losing his mind on this project.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I
yeah.
mean, how did you come up with the concept? Because I mean, I mean, talk us through that, like your creative process. Everybody's got a different one, you know. And so, what is your creative process from like concept to full completion?
I think for that, for Superterranean and probably for Gudeman as well, I've usually have like a whole bunch of ideas floating about that I've picked up as I've gone through. And it's like you might meet a character and think, I'd like to put that person in a film, or you go to a location somewhere and think, I would love to film here, I'd love to film a shootout here or something.
Mm.
Or it might be a bit of music you've heard, or it might be I don't know, a line, a bit of dialogue or something. So you just accumulate those things as you go through life, and they start to kind of group together, and you start to think like there's a whole bunch of things here that are associated with being out in the mountains, survival thing. It might be like a genre as well. I've always wanted to do like a heist movie. I've always wanted to do a revenge movie, horror movies and stuff. So eventually, like you just kind of realize that something's starting to take shape, that you've got a whole bunch of ideas that actually could all go together. And for that film, for Superterranean, and I think for Goodman as well, there's one thing that kind of brings it all together, and that's when you think that's that works. There's a central premise, and for Superterranean, I'd started reading The Secret Commonwealth, which was a book written by a guy called Robert Kirk, and it was written in like 15th century or something. It's one of the oldest existing books on folklore and Scottish folklore because he gathered all this folklore from Gaelic speakers. And he wrote about like fairies and creatures and stuff like that. So, and some of that's referenced in the script as well. And when I read that, there was certain things jumped out at me about like co-walkers and stuff, and that's when I thought this is the binding idea because I've had this idea about doing something in a bothy, maybe a ghost story in a bothy, something like that, and I wanted there to be the mountains. I wanted it to be in the Cairngorms. I wanted there to be a survival element, all those sorts of things. Um, but yeah, kind of same with Goodman. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted to do, and eventually I just sort of with the Goodman, I think it was probably the idea of putting it in the clearances, the Highland clearances, and that kind of just everything then sort of stuck together. It just worked. Like the Highland clearances became the lost civilization from an adventure movie,
Mm.
like in any like Raiders of the Lost Ark or King Solomon's Mines or something like that. There's always the lost civilization. For me, that was going to be like the sort of Highland townships and crofts and stuff.
I love that in the Superterranean. You're reading that book.
Yeah,
When they're sitting there, that's yourself, is it? And it's funny because at one point, I'm sure he turns like you say something like, "What is it?" It's like 24 miles is nothing for us now.
yeah,
I can burst out laughing at that. There's a couple of bits where it's like really good. I mean, a lot of people that are in Scottish wouldn't know that it's a joke. They wouldn't even understand that
yeah,
reference of a snout.
yeah.
But it was kind of cool. I like that. There's a couple of parts in it which I really liked, which was like there's like a lot of like philosophical exchange between the two characters when they're sitting in the bothy, which was kind of cool. Like the notion there's a quote that I wrote down, and it was essentially the notion of it was like you've got to leave your mark. You can't live your whole life underground. I fucking love that.
Mhm.
That's brilliant because that's metaphorically that's essentially the individual pursuing what's meaningful to them, pursuing something that's like like leave a mark on Earth, which is like creating films, music, your art, leave your art.
Yeah, 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 100%. And it like it all ties in. That kind of theme ties in. There's a sort of I don't know what you call it, like a subtextual thing going on throughout the whole film about people leaving things behind,
Mm,
and that for me was like that was a big part of what I wanted to say with Superterranean, I think, and that's like both these themselves tend to come from like outbuildings or farm buildings or whatever shelters that people have had, and then the Mountain Bothy Associations come along and put a proper roof on it and stuff. So they're kind of reclaimed things that have been left behind. And then throughout the film, you get like there's the aircraft wreckage, and there's there's water bottle at one point. You see that and stuff like that. So yeah, there was a lot of that kind of, but all of that was about. And that for me is where folklore comes from. You kind of go somewhere and you see something and you invent a story that sort of works for you to explain why that thing is where it is. And yeah, that was all kind of supposed to tie in, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, the Goodman seems like it's kind of like, I don't know, like giving respect to the subterranean kind of thing. It seems like a similar dynamic, Scottish, there's mysticism in it, magic, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So same, I would call it the same universe, I guess. It's like, um, I think. So with Superterranean, there's a bit of the near the end of the film where he's talking about the spirals that people would carve into rocks, and he says that when you carve a spiral and you really carve into, or you're creating two, there's one in the valleys and in the shadows, and then there's one that's the kind of the positive, the opposite of it, the like a yin yang. There's
Mm,
the one that's the in the light. And for me, Superterranean is kind of in the shadows and the darkness, whereas Goodman is much more the opposite of that. It's in the light, but it's the same in the same universe. So it's kind of it's a I wouldn't call it more light-hearted because there's definitely some like dark folk kind of dark horror elements as well. But it's much more of an adventure film. It's much more upbeat. It's much more kind of it's got fairies and stuff in it. So it's definitely of that like pulling and drawing from the same bank of folklore,
mm.
but with this sort of I guess with a kind of different heart beating throughout it. But yeah, like same. We've got a third film that we're talking to Sandy about just now, which too early really to say anything about it, but it's back into the shadows basically. So it's like you do something like like Goodman, which is going to be there's a cute creature in it, there's a kind of hero, there's a villain, there's like it's much more of that sort of early adventure films that I grew up with.
Right.
Whereas Superterranean is something else. It's a bit sort of weird and mysterious and dark, and you're not really sure what's going on for that whole film. So the next film is going to be like that again. It's going to be a bit more like if people watch it and if people stay to the end, they're going to go on a journey.
Mm, yeah, that's important that you're saying that. Like, if people watch it and if they stay till the end, because I don't know if
Yeah,
that's like I'd messaged this to Sandy actually a couple of months ago about resistance, about the notion that there's a guy called Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about how the fact that every artist engages or encounters resistance in the form of self-criticism or there's no point in doing this, nobody will listen to it, or a general insecurity as a creator, generally speaking. And I think that because that pops into my mind as well, like who the fuck's going to watch this? Are they even going to sit to the
yeah.
end? And I think it's interesting. But I mean, what motivates you in that context? Because you'll hear that same resistance as we all do, I'd imagine.
Yeah. For Superterranean, and I mean to a certain extent with Goodman as well, I feel like there's so few people involved. Um, And Superterranean almost felt like I was writing a novel myself, and nobody knew about this. And I was quite happy to just plug along. Goodman was a bit different because we had to do a crowdfunder, so that brought it to everyone's attention, and people keep asking like, "How's the film going?" And that adds pressure in itself. And that, I guess, is what creates a little bit of doubt in your mind about whether or not this is going to meet people's expectations. Whereas Superterranean, I felt like it was like sitting your driving test. You don't tell anyone you're sitting your driving test.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to ask you, right, how did you do? And with Superterranean, I thought, if I watch this and I'm like, this is shite, then no one's going to see it and no one's going to know I made it. So it doesn't really matter. But with Goodman, I'm not really going to get away with that because I'm going to have to put it out there. But it's not going to be, obviously, it's not going to be shit. And we would just keep working on it until it was what we wanted it to be. But um, yeah, for me, a lot of the doubt came afterwards, after I'd made Superterranean. So that's not true, actually. There was a lot of doubt when I was making it about whether or not it was going to work. because I didn't know. It was just like there was no way of me knowing or understanding whether the film would work as a concept. Because as a concept, it's a bit bizarre. The whole narrative comes out of storytelling. So, the characters tell stories to each other. And somewhere in all of that, there's basically what's actually going on with those characters. And when you reflect back on what the film's about, the details that happen in the film that you would call the plot have your understanding of those have come through the stories that people have told. So it's only through listening to those stories are you able to kind of work out, okay, well, that's who he is, and that's who he is, and that's what's happening. Um, but I had no idea if that was going to work. I had no idea if it was going to be too boring for an audience and stuff. And then when I released it, it was right at the very beginning of COVID. So it was March 2020 when I'd finished the film and I started putting up onto Film Freeway. Like the same week that I was starting to read stuff about COVID, and about like the first cases were being reported in the UK and stuff. And within like 2 weeks of that or something, we were all working from home and lockdown and all that shit happened. So at that point, I was thinking, now I've made this film. It took 4 years to make, and I didn't know if anyone was going to see it. So I had this like existential doubt
Yeah.
that you've gone and made something and you're trying to get an audience to watch it and feed back to you and correspond with you, and I suddenly thought that's not going to happen. And then we started getting rejected from film festivals because you do.
Yeah.
And I'd been told that will happen. You'll get, no matter how good your film is, it's just not going to be for everybody. But you take the first dozen rejections, you take them pretty hard, because you're like, you just think, right, everyone hates this film and it's been a total waste of time. So that's when a lot of my self-doubt came in. And I remember I would go for a run during COVID for my one bit of daily exercise, and I would try and go for a long run, and I would just think about like, have I done the wrong thing? And quite often when it got rejected, I would go and watch the film again myself,
Mm,
and I'd try and watch it with fresh eyes and think, is this rubbish?
mm,
Or is this good? And every time I would get to the end, I would be like, no, this is decent. Like I've seen far worse films
mm,
than this.
yeah.
And then eventually it did get accepted by people. And the very first time I went to, I think it was there was a film festival in Derby called Paracinema, and I met up with the organisers, and they said, "Oh, you need to speak to Bradley. He's going to announce your film, and he's going to do your Q&A." So I went to kind of seek out this guy, and he came and started chatting to me, and he loved the film. He was just talking about so many ideas and concepts that his mind had kind of explored when he was watching it, and it was like my jaw was on the floor just to hear somebody kind of talking about my work like that because
Mm,
I just hadn't expected it. By that point, I wouldn't say I was like really low or had a low opinion of my work or anything, but it was just to realize suddenly, like, not only has this connected with someone, but actually it's connected in a massive way with someone. Like that, everything you wanted to say has been heard by someone. And then I think after that, I was all right. After that, I was like, nah, I think as long as somebody watches this somewhere and has the right reaction, then it's been worth it.
mm.
So
That's good. It's
yeah.
interesting to hear that, say, because the thing is, it's like obviously, I made the Cannaman movie obviously a few years ago, and I had the same thing. And what I've been doing with the Donnie movie, which will actually be ready this year, is recognizing the same emotional narrative in my head that was present at the Candyman movie, and a lot of it is this is fucking shit. Why are you doing this? But and it's the reason why I pursue it is because it feels like I like Carl Jung's interpretation of ideas when he says people don't have ideas, ideas have you, and it feels like that often where it's like the thing's got you, and it feels like you're like this person. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, and I'll get a bit fucking airy fairy with this, but it feels like we're like biological templates that are just channeling this thing through, and your personality, your life experience, and your skill set are the foundations required to produce that idea. And these three things are like essential. Whereas the guy next to you, he might have a similar idea, but he wouldn't be able to produce it because he's not got the same personality, life experience, or skill set. And that's what it kind of feels a bit like. And that's so with the Donnie movie, I felt that same thing of like relative insecurity. And I showed a person the other day, like like, I've got about 40 minutes, 45 minutes of the content done. There's about 4 scenes left, so that'll take it to about an hour and 10 minutes. And let's say I'm drawing it all and all that fucking shit, like everything. There's not a. That's why when you said earlier here actually about how you've got an Audible library that you're like an
Yeah.
archive. That's what I've been doing, and that's what one of the things I thought I was like. So I was kind of in awe when it came up at the end, and like this fucking cunt's made his own soundtrack, man. Like because I think because I'm like obviously I'm doing that. I'm extracting from these archives and feeling like I'm not a professional. Quite honestly, that's what it's like. But when you put in the effort and the graft. Because that's essentially what it's like to do. Is like we watch people like Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, and these are like master classes. They've mastered their craft, and essentially that's what any of us do. Is that we're pursuing a craft that's meaningful to us, and by pursuing it enough, you're mastering it. And it's one thing to master the craft. The next thing is to then puncture that bubble where people recognize it as a thing to be witnessed, kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things that's like the film freeway, putting things through film festivals and stuff, and continuously getting knocked back. It's like I've not even been accepted to any of them. That's what so what it's left me with is like, so why do I do this? And I do it
Yeah.
because I actually said this to my son last week, where I was like, imagine that you wake up on planet Earth and just say you're a musician, or an author. Let's say an author, it's easier. You're an author, and like God's got this fucking like this person, if he was to fucking pan his face in, he's got 100 books available to him, like 100 books to the maximum. The moment he starts like poor diet, now it's down to 80, and once he starts socializing fucking 8 days a week, now it's down to 50. And you can do that, and now I'm going to watch 50 box sets on Netflix and that kind of thing. Now you've got 5 books available to you if you're lucky. But whereas if you flip it around and you discipline yourself in a specific way, you might be able to maximize it, that you can produce all that stuff. And that's one of the things I think to myself is I was like, it took me a year to make the Cannaman movie. It's been almost 3 years with the Donny movie. So when I think about my age range and then the skill set, I've maybe got 15 films, maybe 20 films in me, kind of
Mhm.
thing, timeline wise. And some of mine, I'm like, I
Yeah.
wonder, I want to see how much I can get, and that's now became the thing that serves me to drive me. It's not about
Yeah.
public recognition. It's more along the lines of like creating a cool story for my own life, kind of thing. Ironically,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I
so it's
definitely 100%. That completely resonates. And yeah, the Carl Jung thing and is exactly I think what I was trying to describe of just having all these drawers full of things that you've scavenged, ideas that you've picked up and stuff. But yeah, and just to be able to leave something, to leave a legacy of films. I always wanted to make films. So just having made one and pretty much two now, two feature films, just feels like, yeah, that seems unbelievable
so what
considering
led to
the
that? What led to
story.
that, Ian? Was it what was your inevitably were storytellers? Like what was your story that led you to being like a filmmaker?
I'd always wanted to be a filmmaker. So even like in primary school, I remember I used to do cartoon cells, and I would usually used to rip off films that I'd seen, and it was often Jaws. That was like one of my favorite films growing up as a kid. And every cartoon cell I would do would just have someone going swimming, and then shark appearing, and then just like the leg floating down, just exactly out of the film. And it would always be just black pen and then red for all the blood. So that's the reason why probably all my films are a wee bit gory. And then I used to write once I'd gotten a wee bit older in primary school. I'd write stories, and I did have aspirations to be an animator as well at one point because when I was a teenager, I got right into manga.
Right.
And I thought like I'm never going to be able to make a film that has explosions and car chases and all that sort of stuff. So if I go down the animation route, I'll be able to do all of that. I can do
Mm.
whatever I want. But I was never good enough as an artist, I don't think, to not in my own head anyway. I didn't have the
I
confidence.
know that feeling.
So but then I'd done youth theatre for throughout my teens as well, and that was brilliant. Like during youth theatre, the thing I kind of walked away from that with was I'd as a like as a high school kid, I did BBs and I did scouts, and at one point even did the air training corps, like the air cadets, and all those organisations were very like very regimented. They wanted everybody to dress exactly the same, and you got inspected to make sure you looked exactly the same as the person next to you and stuff. It was a really weird thing. Like I could understand that for things like swimming. Obviously,
Mm.
like when you swim, you're supposed to adopt a style and you're supposed to just like mimic the style of and learn it until it's mechanical. But going to youth theatre was the first time that anybody, as a teenager, had said to you, like, you have something that only you can bring to this that is unique to you. And anyone else could do this part, but they can't do it the way that you could do it.
Mm.
And they kind of taught you that, but they also like we had a great producer. Her name was Karen, and she kind of ruled with an iron fist. And she would just say, like, she was the one that instilled in me that all that creativity and talent is great, but it's nothing like discipline because you have to learn your fucking lines.
Yeah.
Like if you don't and you come into the room without knowing your lines, she would just go through you and she would she would shout and scream at you and she'd make you feel like that size. And you would come back the next week knowing your lines. And that's when I learned that like without that foundation, without putting the work in, you're not going to be able to get up on that stage and channel the creativity and the talent. You know, there are some people that can just switch it on and that, you know, they don't need to make that much an effort. But for me, like, and the way we were taught is that's that's not what it's about. If you've got something and you want to learn how to use it properly, like that craft, if you want to polish that craft, then it takes work and you have to learn what works for you, but you have to learn how to work. You have to learn that discipline. And if that discipline is learning lines or if it's, you know, learning a musical instrument or whatever it is, there is going to be graft. There's going to be bits that you don't want to do that you'd much rather do the cool bits and the sexy bits. But that was my takeaway from youth theatre. But I remember coming out of that the Scottish Youth Theatre. Um, and that's for the first time when I met other people who were like me that were kind of did a bit of acting and did a bit of theatre, but really we all loved films. And that's what we wanted to do. And at the age of about 16, 17 at Scottish Youth Theatre, I remember we did a 15-minute Reservoir Dogs. So
All
we
right.
just like edited the script down and then performed it for folk. And that again was just me like mimicking films that I'd seen and films and doing the kind of thing I wanted to do. Then I went off to uni immediately after that with a view to becoming a filmmaker. And it was a media course, and everybody on that course seemed to want to be filmmakers as well. And met loads of people who they all loved the same films. They all kind of, you know, wanted to make the same style of films as well. But by the end of the course, most of them just wanted to go into the industry and be editors or cameramen or, you know, just like post-production jobs. They just wanted to earn a living. And
Yeah.
I kind of came out of it confused because I was like, I still don't know how to actually make a film. Like I understand how to shoot a film, I understand how to edit a film, I understand a lot more about writing films and what should go into that. But nobody's yet told me like how you can get the equipment, how you can hire a crew, how you can get funded or, you know, attract investment. No one has like covered things like distribution or anything like that. They covered was like if you're going to work as a cameraman, this is what you need to know about setting a camera up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I came back to Fife, thinking that the people I knew, the people I'd grown up with, were the best people that would be able to help me try and make films, and they seemed to want to do it as well. So I spent about 15 years just trying to get films off the ground. I remember people had told me, like way back when I'd left uni, those same guys that were going down to London to go straight into the industry had said, like, it's not going to work. If you go back home, you go back to Fife and you try and make films with no money, you're not working your way up through the industry. It's just not going to happen. You're just gonna, you know, you're going to be wasting your time. And about 15 years later, I was starting to think they were right. But I finally got hold of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, and that just seemed to work for me. There was like everything I shot on it, I just loved. I loved the look of it. It got me into color grading, and it was the first time I'd used a tool that I really thought like this can capture the kind of stuff because I'd used cameras before and tried to film stuff that looked dramatic or looked atmospheric, and it just never worked. It never came out the way you wanted it to. So as soon as I got the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, I started planning Superterranean, but also started doing some short films just to get some stuff under my belt. So, I mean, really, since about 2015, I think, is when I first started putting shorts out and then started working on Superterranean. So that would be the beginning. But for the like 15 years before that, I was trying my best,
Mm.
just kept failing. And I kept, like in that kind of Thomas Edison sense, instead of failing, I was just finding all the ways that you don't make a film.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all the ways it's gonna just backfire or implode. And usually it was by like, you know, your ambition's too big, you've got too many people involved in this, so it's going to cost too much money or whatever. So every time a project failed, I would like iteratively try to write the next project to make sure none of those things happen. And that eventually led me to Superterranean, which was a film that had hardly anyone in it, had hardly any locations, and there's no like requirement for big kind of action or set pieces or um, like complicated VFX or anything like that. It was quite easy, self-contained film, and more than anything, by this point I was starting to think, is this just me? Like, am I just not good at making films or getting to the end of a project? So I thought if I write a film and plan a film and I've got no excuse not to just go out on Saturday and start shooting this film, then at least if I then don't make the film, I know it was my fault. And so that was kind of part of the Superterranean. It was like a gun to my head as well. It was like my way of saying, this is it. Like, you've got no excuse. You have to do this. Um, and I was growing the hair and the beard, and I hated it, I hated having long hair. And so I thought, like, if I don't make this film and then I just go and shave my head and shave my beard off, then that's me admitting I can't do it. That's me admitting I failed. So all of that was just like to pile the pressure on myself to make myself do it. And it worked, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot actually, because it's like this. You're in this prison, this
Mm,
fucking hair prison to make sure this project's done. One of the things that's interesting, you keep saying about how you were copying, you were imitating, like that kind of thing. It's like that. I love that imitate before you innovate concept. And I was
mhm.
watching this thing the other week there, and it was Hunter S. Thompson. So before he came up with his what was the style of writing? Was it like I can't remember.
Gonzo.
That's it. That's right. Exactly. So he came up with that style, but what he did before all that was he copied. I don't know if it was like fuck. I don't know if it's right. It's not like Hemingway or something.
Hemingway was a big fan of, yeah.
Was he? Yeah, so I think so.
Yeah,
It must be that then. So he copied word for word his works, and he wrote it from the
right.
beginning to the end. And the reason why he did that was because he wanted to see what it felt like to create a masterpiece. So he wrote it word
Yeah,
for word, like this is, and then that allowed him the. It was like the coordination to understand structure and in the context of writing and stuff like that, which is really quite cool when you think about
yeah,
that. That it's because a lot of the time there was one time actually I was at college in Kirkcaldy, and I was getting off the bus, off the train, and one of the lecturers was there, and he does. It was just this wee guy. I don't even know his name. It's the only time I spoke to him, and he said this thing where he went. When I was talking about the fact that at that time I was doing like cartoons, were barely even fucking getting coloured. There was no animation whatsoever. This was been like what 2016, something like that. And I remember saying to him about how the fact that like I'm fundamentally creative as a person, and he just fucking dismissed it and went, "Creativity is not a thing." He says every single thing has been copied. He says there's not a creativity, and it kind of left it in my mind. I was like, well, if creativity is not real, then what is it we're engaged in then? Is it just like a realignment of what, like, is creativity just a realignment of what already was? And I think that's it's still stuck in my mind because I firmly believe that creativity is a real entity. Like it's
mhm.
like it's alive. This thing's alive. As I was saying before, obviously it takes us to channel it through and stuff like that. But I do think it's quite funny that when you see people's stories about how they get to where they're at, there are little echoes. So I was like drawing cartoons in class and shit like that, and just
Yeah,
and it wasn't any like caricatures of the teachers and shit. Couldn't even do a caricature, dude, to be honest. And it just meaning nothing, and then it was like just moving it all the way through and stuff like that. And there's like echoes of this purpose from a young age, and
yeah,
I'd had no idea. Like the first time that I ever had any form of insight towards any animation series and all that kind of thing, I remember was I was 9, and I had the school jotter. At the end of the year, you get the fucking math jotter to take home, and you've done 3 pages on it or something. And so what I did was I used the jotter, I ripped out the pages, and I did this collection, this collection of animals, and it was like fucking an elephant and a giraffe and fucking birds and shit, and I named them all. And like this is going to be a little series type thing because I was watching The Simpsons all the time.
yeah,
So it's interesting that you had the same. There's like echoes of this future purpose, which makes me
yeah,
always question the notion that it's just like it's just a job, or it feels like there's this metaphysical push often.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
what it
it's a
kind of feels
definite
like.
compulsion. And it's weird. I mean, you're making me think like I don't know what drives an 8-year-old kid to sit and recreate Jaws, cell by cell
Yeah.
in a comic strip. Like I don't know what the value in that is, and I don't know why an 8-year-old kid thinks there's value in it. But I felt like I just felt like I was doing something. I felt like I was saying something, even though I'm saying something that Spielberg's already said so much
Mm,
better.
mm,
But yeah, it seemed to work. But it's yeah, definitely compulsion. Like I always, when I came out of uni, I remember trying to make a film camera myself, trying to make a cinema, it's like a cinema camera, and looking at getting projector parts and gates to pull film through, and it's like pricing 35 mil stock and stuff because I thought I have to do this, and
mm,
I don't know any other way of getting a hold of. the equipment to do it. And nowadays people will say, "Oh, just pick up a phone and just use a phone and film what you want to film."
Yeah.
And I say, "Well, I mean that is decent advice, and the core and the principle of that is just someone telling you you should just get going and don't
Mm.
let barriers stand in your way." But I was never happy with, the things I wanted to say were things that you couldn't say by just picking up your phone and going out with your mate
Mm.
around Kirkcaldy and filming on a cloudy day. You know what I mean? There was the stuff I wanted to do and the stuff I wanted to say required a little bit more than that, a little bit more forethought, scripts, people who could act and stuff.
So that there,
So
that
yeah,
sorry, and I thought that was quite, that's interesting. You saying that about how the fact that you're looking at essentially how the mechanics of the camera works, right? Because I think often what you see when it comes to people that are pursuing their craft to the point of mastery is that they go from this point of what does it take to make the project, and then the jump from there to like almost complete mastery as they look at it as an engineer, where it's like it's not just a case where it's like how do I make the film? It's like what's the mechanics of how every factor of the film is made. One
yeah,
of the things that I've noticed, like specifically, like you pick up pieces of information with every project you do, inevitably. But in with the Donnie movie, what I've realised I was like is when it comes to film specifically, is you're dealing with amongst other things, but like it's like a dualism where it's like you're dealing with the observer, which is the person watching your thing, and perspective, what you offer them. And I think that's
mhm,
what's quite cool about that is because of the fact that the perspective, I think, what determines like a masterclass director or writer or that kind of thing is that the perspective that's offered is multifaceted. It's not just one, because that's why you get lots of people like Quentin Tarantino does it in Pulp Fiction, where he opens a briefcase and there's 50 different people saying 50 different things of what's in the fucking briefcase, and
yeah,
these kind of things. And I just, it's fascinating, I also like the notion of every person watching this or watching when you're walking around life is that your perspective is a fucking film. It's like you're literally looking at it as a fucking square, and then that's your, you know what I mean, your angle.
yeah,
So it's like film is a really potent medium.
yeah. Well, he said Quentin Tarantino said something about that. I think it was to do with the briefcase about how someone had asked him what's in the briefcase, and his response was something along the lines of, "You don't get to tell people that they're right or wrong anymore. Once you make the film and you put it out there, it's whatever's in their head is in the briefcase." Or if someone wants to make an argument, the writer or the director doesn't get to say, "Ha ha, no," because I directed it, or I know what was in the briefcase, and it was this. And after I put Superterranean out, I didn't think there was anything all that ambiguous about it. But I got emails and people asking questions, and people like I saw people reviewing it saying that the ending was ambiguous and stuff. I was like, really? Was it?
Mm.
And when I watch it again through different lenses, I see what people are getting at, and I see why people would say that. And some people criticize it, I think, for being ambiguous. And again, I was like, well, that wasn't the intention. So if you're criticizing anything, it was for it being accidentally ambiguous.
Mm.
But you don't. I realize, like, and from what Tarantino said, I kind of agree with it. And I've seen the other side of that now, that you don't get to decide anymore. So I don't get to say it wasn't ambiguous. This is what happened. If somebody watches it and they have a different interpretation of it, they're not wrong,
Yeah,
because they experienced it. They had that perspective. They had a different perspective to you, and you don't get to gatekeep anymore.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's just a privilege for anybody to watch the thing at the end, because I think for any artist, without the observer, you're just alone.
Mm, yeah.
It's like you need the person to look at it, otherwise, it's just you looking at your own. It's like an echo chamber, really.
That's exactly what I felt when I released it, because when I started feeling that no one was gonna see it, I started realizing that that correspondence with an audience was important to me, and it had been important. I was describing it was like working on a novel yourself, or sitting your driving test and not telling anyone. It kind of had felt like that for about 4 years, that nobody. I mean, the guys that worked on the film had read the script. They knew what was happening in the film,
Mm.
but I still felt nobody knows what I'm saying with this film until they watch it. And suddenly felt like no one's going to watch it now,
Mm.
and no one's going to ever hear that. And I realized all of a sudden that that was important. The important part wasn't just making the work, because that had been the important part to me for 4 years, because I was at that point where I'd failed for 15 years and failed for about four projects. And I was so desperate that this one wouldn't fail. And as far as I was concerned, the most important thing was that I just got to the end and I made the film I wanted to make.
Mm.
But having got to that point and realizing, no, that's actually, it's not the most important thing, is that somebody somewhere watches this and connects with it, and it means something to someone, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm lucky because I got started getting emails, and lots of people from America seem to see it. They did discover it on Tubi and Prime, and I collected a little copy of like all the good emails and the good reviews and stuff like that, and I just put them in a little folder. So if I'm ever feeling really bad about the work, or if I'm feeling, is this worth it? Do I need to keep going? I could read all those positive remarks and then just be like, yeah, there are people out there. There is always going to be an audience out there.
I love that. That's fucking brilliant, man. I love that a lot. What's interesting as well, the other day, I was showing somebody the CANNAMAN trailer and some of the work I'd done, and they were asking about the production process, what's involved, length of time, and all that kind of thing. One of the things that I find interesting is people's like disbelief at when you tell them how long it takes, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
Like, and then they seem to not be able to comprehend like what it is. Like, how can you spend so long on something like, and like you're saying 4 years for that,
yeah,
and it's like the stamina that's required to do that is like it's like a precursor. You have to have that stamina, and I think what's
yeah,
interesting as well, the stamina is a consequence of that. What you're describing as 15 years, that stamina would have came as a consequence of the 15 years. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that, I was saying this to my son's mum the other day actually, it was that the potency of the thing you're producing seems to be in alignment with how willing you are to hyper focus a lot of time on one. Like if you focus 5 days on a minute's worth of content, that minute's worth of content is going to be fucking dripping. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be fucking potent as anything. If you focus
mhm,
5 hours on it, then it's going to not be as potent. So I think it's and that's where stamina's built. You know, that you're willing to spend an enormous amount of time on a piece of footage which is going to have a really, really short life on the screen. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You do come away like you think, you get to just sit for 90 minutes and watch this. It took I had to sit for five years to get this done. Yeah, there's quite a few times during the process that I've thought, like, wouldn't it be amazing just to have a time machine and go forward in time just so you can sit and watch the film
Yeah.
and not have to work on it anymore.
Yeah.
But that would take all the fun out of it. But yeah, yeah,
Because I was just I'm trying to think about it from your perspective. Because inevitably, like creating animation and creating the films that you're making are obviously two different, but they're very similar also. And I think so.
Mhm.
What from my perspective, it's like I'll spend. So I made a piece of footage for the Donnie movie. I finished it last night, and it's about 7 seconds. Just this one moment. The guy's smoking a joint, if I'm being honest, and it's just 7 seconds of footage, and it took me probably just under 2 hours. You know, and it's only
Yeah,
7 seconds, you know, but it took me the length of time it
yeah,
took me to draw it, to animate it, to color it, you know, and then like brushing away any errors, and then by the time I'm putting it up, and it's one of the things that at the very beginning of me like taking the step from just drawing fucking single frame cartoon pictures to like making something animated, it was something I had to kind of come to terms with it. Like I have to be willing to put in that stamina to like on a lot of fucking like a lot of effort on a small amount of fucking screen time. Otherwise, the thing's not going to be made.
yeah, yeah, definitely. The shots in Goodman that are half a second long or something, and they've taken weeks, like just weeks of VFX mostly, or compositing, and they were hard enough to capture in camera as well. So yeah, we shot this scene back in November, which we spent a few weeks in pre-production for. Um, and the shoot was like Saturday, Sunday, um, pretty much till about like 2 in the afternoon. So we started about 9, 10 in the morning and shot till about 2 in the afternoon, because that's when the sun would come around and it would just we couldn't shoot anymore. So we had about 8 hours, 9 hours of shooting, and we got about a 6 minute scene out of that, and I was happy with that. Like that's about the best ratio. It was a long time in pre-production. There was a lot of work went into getting all the set elements together and stuff, but that's probably one of the most productive shoots. But there's other ones, like a lot of the Goodman and this happened in Superterranean as well. We spend most of the day just getting to the location, and then you get there and you've got about an hour to shoot, and you just have to work really fast, and then you get hopefully like out of that hour you get a minute or 2 minutes worth of footage, and then you have to come back off the mountain before it gets dark.
Yeah.
So in Superterranean, we filmed at the top of two Munros. We filmed at the top of one called CANNAMAntv, which was where the airplane wreckage was,
Mm.
and then filmed at the top of Ben Macdui, which was the end scene with Big Cairn is up there. And both of those days were like they were full days, from dawn to dusk, with about an hour of shooting in the middle. And we did pretty well in terms of how much footage we got in each location. We luckily didn't have to go back either. Whereas with Gudeman, there's a few faraway locations we've had to go back to. So we've been to Skye twice and we've been to Torridon twice. Um, yeah, but shit happens.
Yeah, and it's all part of the process. Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's pretty cool, man. I mean, that's what a lot of people would ask that. Like, what is because as you're engaged in like fucking like all that graft for like a minute, 2 minutes worth of work and stuff like that. Like anybody that's not engaged in the craft and that kind of thing, they're like, well, what is the stamina? Like, what is motivating you throughout that process? And is it just for you personally, just like I'm looking forward to this project being finished?
It is now. I'm looking forward to it being finished. I think for me, like it's a wee bit like I think about when because I run, but I'm not a very good runner. I'm not a fast runner, and the distances I do are not that impressive either. But I'll go out and I'll kind of do my thing basically, and I run almost just as a way of like meditating.
Mm,
Um, and I've seen other people who, when they're training for like a marathon or a half marathon or something like that, you have a program, and it's the reason you get up at 7 in the morning and go running in the rain or the snow or in the dark or whatever. Whereas I probably won't do that. I'll probably just like think I'll run later.
mm,
And the running I do kind of serves my life. So if I have a hard day or, if I have something, if for whatever reason I want to go out and burn some energy, I just feel like I've just gone for it. I can do that. Or if I want to go for a long, slow run, I can do that. It kind of serves whatever I need at that moment in time. Um, and for me, the way we made this film, The Goodman and Superterranean, it's a bit like the way I run, whereas the way other people make films, that's more like the marathon program,
mm,
where they condense everything and they say, right, for the next like 2 weeks, life isn't going to be fun. And we're going to have to get up at 5 in the morning, but we'll get through it. And once we get through it, we'll have a film to show. Whereas I'm a bit more like, there's been in this film, I've sculpted things out of clay. I've spent hours and hours just drawing on a tablet to do like poster elements and stuff. Um, the music as well, like I sit and tinker with the music. So it's whatever my life needs, I'll take that from the film, I guess.
mm,
And at some point, I realize that's not going to be good enough. I'm going to have to, if I want to get to the end of this, I am going to have to just say we need to just schedule everything and go and film it, whether it's raining or regardless of what the weather's like or whether I'm feeling it or not, or whether I think I'm ready or not. I just have to say we've got to go out and do it. But for the first 4 years, it was kind of like, yeah, if I felt ready to do that, if I felt like I wanted to do that and I was going to get the best out of that scene, I would go and film it. I was kind of waiting for things to align, I guess. And that does pay off. Some things do align really well. Like you suddenly, you get great ideas for how you're going to do this scene and how what's going to work with the scene. Or like I'll write a piece of music and I'll suddenly think that's the piece of music for the end, or that's the piece of music for this. And now I know that now I've got the music, I can work the scene around it. Whereas if I'd put everything together and said we were going to film this whole film in 18 weeks or something like that, that would have never happened
mm,
because you'd just be chasing your tail the whole time. And what I've found as well, which is, I don't know if this is like a tip for other filmmakers, but um, when we go to those faraway locations and we only have like an hour to film stuff, everything's usually quite regimented. It's all storyboarded. We know exactly what we're going to do. We set up in an order that makes sense, that helps us like get through things as quickly as we can. And we get it done. And generally we haven't had to go back to most of those faraway locations. We don't have to go back to Orkney, thank fuck. We're not going to have to go back to, most of the places we don't have to go back because we did our job. But generally, like there's certain places that are quite close to us where I've gone and I've shot things and I've not been too sure about the way I want them to be, and then I've come away and I've had a better idea, and then we've gone and shot something else to sort of change the scene around. Either that or we've gone. and we've shot stuff, and I've come and I've edited it, and I'm like, it's just missing something. It's missing, like, it feels very rigid. It feels like we're just moving the tripod around to
Mm.
tell the story mechanically. Whereas I want some nice moving shots. I want these shots that take a bit of time, that are a bit more complicated to set up. So you then go back with the intention of only doing like 3 or 4 pickup shots, but you spend a whole day doing it. And those are the creative days, because those are the days where you're not sitting there with 25 shots to get through and you're like, right, we just have to get through all of this.
Yeah.
Those are the days where you kind of sit back and you enjoy them so much more. And you kind of think, right, what's the best way to shoot this one shot? And you come away with like a quarter of the amount of footage, but the stuff you come away with is so much better, and it augments into what you've already shot.
Mm.
So I found that so many times, especially with Gudeman, but a wee bit with Superterranean as well. That you go and shoot and everything's fine, it'll all cut together nicely. But if you spend another day
Mm.
and go out there, you can really get some beautiful, like, you know, just great establishing shots, or you know, you can just take the shots that are important and just make them so much better.
Yeah, that's why
Um,
I've got to always try my best to make sure I don't get too fucking airy fairy. But I always genuinely believe
yeah.
that's why I believe that there's like a consciousness. That's why I firmly believe in God, and everybody to their own, obviously. But like and one of the things that I've noticed through my own fucking journey of these things is that the your willingness to sacrifice will be directly proportionate to the rewards you get from it. And that's what it
Mhm.
feels like. So the time that you put in, if you're like, as you're describing, like, oh, you do a few days, fuck it, we'll do one more day. You get like double the amount of fucking reward from that. And it's like it's the same thing when if errors occur, specifically when the amount of times that I've been making something and I would then save the file and then I would go back into it and the whole file had been corrupted for some reason. I'm like, fuck, so it's another week working on this thing.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons, so many instances of like, I should just give this up, but there's something that
Yeah.
like kind of compels you to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. For me, with Goodman in particular, all the stuff that was brand new was all the creature stuff. So making things, sculpting out of monster clay, 3D printing, skeleture, like animatronics, all of that. Like I had no idea what I was doing. Silicon casting, which is like a very unforgiving process. You kind of I use room temperature cure silicon, so you put these two compounds together, and you've got about 15 minutes before this stuff is just not, it's going to be, not viscous enough to be able to pour into a mold. So
Right.
you got to work fast, and it's messy and you freak out. It's just like it's not fun. The first few times you do it, it is really not fun because you're just really stressed about doing things right. And I've done them wrong so many times. Like the wee creature, the goblin that I created, I think got him wrong about 5 times or something. And each time I was just like,
Yeah.
every time a 3D print would fail, you'd be like, that's another 12 hours it's going to take to print that tiny little piece of his ear or whatever it is. And I'd just be so pissed off. I just felt like, we're not getting anywhere. But in the greater scheme of things, it's nothing
Mm.
because, it fails, and then you just go back and you think about it, and you're really down, but you think about it and you think, okay, right, I think I've got a better way of doing it. And you do it, and eventually it works. And then you forget about all the times it failed. And the big creature, like we're still working on him, and it's been exactly like that. Like I've failed to do to get it to work so many times, and then just gone right back to the beginning and said, right, okay, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. And this is to get a creature that looks the same. Like it's not like we're saying, okay, right, he's not going to have 2 ears anymore. He's going to have one because two is just a pain in the arse. It's not like that. It's like you're doing the same thing, but you're just figuring out different ways to do it.
Mm.
But yeah, it's been a real journey of like discovering that kind of it's funny because I remember going to a guidance counselor at Boyle when I was at high school and saying they were like, what do you want to do when you leave school? And I said, well, I'd really like to work in creature effects and animatronics. And they were like, okay, looking at their folder saying maybe media studies for you. And I was just thinking, like, okay, fine, I'll do that. But again, they had no idea, and neither did I really. But I found myself now doing that for this film. I've kind of come full circle 25 years later, and what I've discovered is it's really difficult. I don't know that I do enjoy it either, because it's so laborious, and making all those mistakes isn't enjoyable. But I really love the results.
Mm.
Like when you've got something that looks cool, and it's great to work with in film. Although it's 9 times out of 10 they're a pain in the arse to work with actually on camera because they like the animatronics fail or the puppet looks fake or whatever. But when you get that, when you know the 1% that looks really good and you make it work, and then you see the whole thing come together and it's like this thing's alive, then that's when you feel good. That's when you feel like it was all worth it.
Yeah. It sounds like what's it? What's that? What is it like? Polymathetic? Is that the right? Is that the
Oh
right
yeah,
word where
yeah,
you're like
yeah, like
multi-talented
polymath,
kind of
yeah.
thing? Yeah, yeah, polymath. Because that's one I've seen some of your posts coming up and stuff like that, and it's kind of fascinating to see that it is this wide range of skill sets that are required. And when you're describing, that's all that passes my mind when you're describing the attempt and the fail and the attempt and the fail. That's an apprenticeship. You're engaged in an
Yeah,
apprenticeship. That's what that is.
yeah. I think it's the storytelling. It's what you hit upon. Like I think it's when I fell in love with films, I didn't fall in love with just like the writing, the just monologues and stuff. I didn't. I loved Jaws, but I didn't watch Jaws and think like that monologue about the USS Indianapolis that makes me really want to be a writer, and like when I watched Reservoir Dogs and stuff, I didn't just watch it and think the style of that film is so cool. And same with Danny Boyle's films or David Fincher's films, or like it wasn't just the style of the director, and it wasn't just the quality of the writing, and it wasn't just the cinematography or the score by John Williams or Hans Zimmer. It's all of those things. Like there wasn't one of those things that I wasn't interested in. When I wanted to be a filmmaker, it's not like I, it was one of those things I would just say, nah, I'm not interested in music.
Mm,
Find me someone that is interested in music and they can do the score.
mm,
And I'm lucky that I can do enough to do my own score, I guess. And if there were people who were champing at the bit to do that stuff for me, I would happily let them. Like I don't really want to act in my own films, but I know that it's a means to an end, and I know that I'm always available and I'm always going to be there on set, and I already know the characters and most of the dialogue, and inevitably you kind of put a lot of yourself into your characters anyway. So I know that I'm not going to be a bad fit in terms of as long as I can just get a performance out.
mm,
So it's kind of just come that way by accident, really.
mm.
But it's because there isn't any one of those crafts that I'm not interested in or that I don't want to try. And yeah, yeah, I would say that like the thing that makes us want to be storytellers probably means that we have that kind of compulsion to be a part, to be involved in everything.
Mm.
Because when you're animating, you're doing the performance as well and the cinematography
Yeah.
and the directing. Like the animation, I think, is a great discipline for filmmakers, and I think it's something that every live action filmmaker should try doing. Because I've done a few animations before, and it always made me think about trying to be very frugal and trying to say as much or tell as much of the story as I could without changing the camera angle.
Yeah.
So I would think about, well, if I do this and I have this in the foreground and then I do that, this person comes into the background. And you think about it from a director's point of view, but you also think about it from the point of view of not having to reset and establish a new camera angle, because then you're going to have to draw the background again and you're going to have to, reframe the characters and
Yeah.
stuff. So I think it's a great discipline, like.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's if I'm being honest, I'm definitely navigating through a sense of insecurity with the quality. So one of the things in my mind, it's like, um, just fucking throwing this out to the universe. So I think the reason why that I tried to get somebody else to animate the stuff at the very beginning.
Mhm.
I couldn't find anybody. It just every fucking window it would just boom boom doors closed, and I was like fuck. The timeline had reached a point where I was like, nah, I've been waiting too long. I need to get this done. And I think what's happened is a consequence of like so doing the drawing, you're doing the story, but you're doing everything. You're doing the voices and all that shit, writing it all. Is that now it's in a position where if I was to be given a studio, I would know how to manage that because I've done every single little micro
Yeah.
expression of the production. So I would know how to do the storyboard element or the creative sides or the script writing and voiceovers and all these different things as a consequence of not having anybody there to do it in the first place. And this is where in my mind I feel like excited about and going forward in the future, where it's like it feels like I'm two sides of like one side I'm doing something meaningful to me because I have to. I would I'd become like an alcoholic or something if I wasn't to do this. You know, I'd be something that there would
Yeah.
have to be something that would replace the dopamine urge kind of thing. But there's
Yeah.
also another part where it feels like I'm getting kind of like I'm walking through my own apprenticeship. You know, where I'm going through specific experiences for something that's to come next. That's what it feels like. It feels like it's any project I'm working on now is not for this project. It's for the
Yeah.
next one. It's
Yeah.
preparing me for the next one. That's what it always feels like.
Yeah, I did some of that actively, and so, the Goodman was a film I wanted to make before Superterranean, and I'd started developing it, and I just couldn't get anywhere with it because, like I said, I didn't know how to do anything with creatures, and I'd started working with CGI and Blender. I'd started
Mm.
crafting things, and I just thought this is not going to work. This is not going to get me where I need it to get me. And after about 2 years, I thought, if you keep doing this is going to be another failed project. Well, it was another failed project. So then I moved on to like you can see the echo as well because with Goodman there's pretty much just one character throughout, and that was the iteration. And then I was like, yeah, but it's still too complicated. There's too many locations. There's the creatures. It's set in like a 18th century. I need costume. I need all of this stuff. So I moved on to Superterranean instead. But when I made Superterranean, I made sure there was elements of that we filmed on the top of two Monroes. We filmed with practical, but there's some silicon effects and some latex and stuff. And I started to get like a little bit compositing as well for visual effects. And then when I did Serene, that's like visual effects daft. It's kind of there's a few really complicated effects builds in Serene that you don't obviously you're not meant to see or meant to know that, but you could tell that something's happened there that didn't happen in real life. That there's been an effect. You just probably don't know how it was done, and that was intentional to try and kind of like build my confidence so that everything was channeling into Goodman, so that I could. You know, I could work with silicon, I could work with 3D printing. So that came from Sair Ane and Superterranean. So yeah, like I'm always a little bit of what I do is always trying to prep me for the next film.
Mhm.
Um,
How much of your life would you say percentage wise is consumed with thoughts of filmmaking?
so I do work on it every day. There's a thing, it was a Reddit thing that I read once about no zero days. I don't know if
Mm.
you've ever read this
No,
thing.
no,
This is a
no.
post so there's a guy, it was in response to someone who was really struggling with productivity and really like just generally just struggling. And this guy wrote this, became viral and became kind of like he got upvoted and rewarded for it and stuff like this. But it was just like a statement about one of the things that I latched onto was this concept of having no zero days. And a zero day is just a day where you don't do anything at all.
Mm.
So if it gets to 11:59 and you haven't done anything to move forward with your dream, with your goal,
Mhm.
then you just take out your phone and you write some notes about what you're going to do tomorrow or something like that. That's at least something.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to follow that mantra of kind of like every single day something happens.
Mhm.
So I tinker or take out my phone and write some notes or
Mhm.
um but I've tried to put like at least an hour a day in for the last 5 years. With the exception, there's the occasional day like Christmas Day or whatever where you're like not working on the film today.
Yeah.
But we've shot on Goodman for about 56 days or something, maybe about 60 days. And those will be complete days, like 12-hour days of shooting. And post-production, I don't know how many hours I've spent on that, but yeah. So on a good day, on a quiet day, it's an hour.
Mhm.
And on a busy day, it's like 12. But yeah, there's always something because otherwise, I think I would start to if a whole week went by and I didn't do anything for the film, I would definitely start to despair a bit.
Yeah, well, that's what I
And
was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering if you'd start to feel because inevitably, like, I feel the only way I can describe it is withdrawals. Like, I feel like
yeah,
this, like, um, it's like an alarm bell going off in my mind where it's like if I was to go one day with it, it's like my mind's constantly go back there, go back there. Like, I do the same thing. I write notes on my phone. Like, I did a
yeah,
book in 2022, I think, and it's called The Productive Path, and it's not long. It's about 8,000 words, and it's not and the format of that is exactly the template that I use. So it's like a to-do list is one of the most powerful fucking things you could have in your life,
yeah,
because you're like detailing, but the thing is you've got to respect it. It's not just I'm writing it down therefore it's done. It's more along the lines of that's like it almost has like a paternal role where it's like, no, you've wrote this down, therefore you're responsible to make sure this happens. And
Yeah,
that was one of the things that I always like. A to-do list is a good like a mechanism of like fucking get busy, you know. And I always have that
yeah,
feeling of like if I didn't do something today, like that 0 days is quality because what I have in my mind is if I can color one picture today, I'm one picture closer. That's what I feel like,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I used to, when I was writing Superterranean, and I still do this, part of my creative process, particularly for writing, is to go for a walk for about an hour or a
Right.
run. But I find when I run, it's not quite the same. Although some of my best ideas have maybe come to me while I've been running, I think. But usually when I was walking, I would just go through whatever I was writing. I would think about what I was going to write next. And I got in the habit of always going out walking at work during lunchtime. And it would always kind of like I'd get back knowing what I was going to do next with a script. And that worked for me. And then when I started shooting the film, I would think about what I was going to shoot and how I was going to shoot it. And when I released the film, I would just think about I've failed again, I've had another rejection or whatever. But I would try and rationalize that. And I remember after I'd finished, like I'd finished submitting to film festivals, and there was nothing really going on with it. I would still go on these walks because it was just part of. Well, it was 4 years, so I was doing them daily. So I was just it was part of my routine, and I remember thinking like, what do I think about now? Because I'm not working on this film anymore. And I started thinking about how to be happy. I was like, let's try and like think about what it means to be happy and what you need to do to be happy and what things make you happy. And what does it feel? What does it actually feel like to be happy? What would it feel any different to the way you feel right now? And all that type of stuff. And I was just very philosophically going through that in my own head. Um, and then before long, I just started thinking, right, what's the next project? It's funny, like, and I don't know why, I don't know what that means, but there was something in my head that was just like, right, we're not working on anything creative right now. Let's just think about happiness. Let's think
Mm.
about contentment. Let's think about like, is there a way to just live a life where you don't need to create stuff or you don't need to do anything, you don't need to, but you could just be content with what you've got and just be happy. And then before long, I was like, right, now, fuck that. I need to work on my next film. What's it going to be? And that's when I started writing, going back to Gudeman and started
Mm.
processing that. So I don't know what's going to happen after I finish this because this has been 5 years now.
Mm.
No doubt I will quite quickly be thinking about the next film. But yeah, I'm tempted just to see where my mind goes with that film to work on.
Yeah, it might be a
See
mini
if I just
series.
start getting
I was gonna say it might be like a mini series or something. It's funny, Ian, because
yeah
one of the things that passes my mind when you say that, you're like, because I did the same thing. It's so funny that this very similar template that creatives seem to have, whereas like I had the same thing. So I created the CANNAMAN movie. I was like fucking dreams of like Hollywood arriving and fucking mental shit, and nobody's seen it really. I mean, I don't know what, over 100 people or something like came at the premiere, and then I put it up on YouTube essentially maybe 3 months later. But I had the same thing of like, well, this project's done. Like, what do I do? Like, how can I get? Because I felt happy once it was done. I felt like euphoric. I felt that serotonin completion feeling, and I was
yeah
like, oh, and I was like, so what do I do then to maintain that? And one of the things that in my mind, I was like, well, that's like pursuing happiness is like a failure in a sense. What I thought, what I concluded with was, it's not happiness I should chase. It's a day that feel has been meaningful. And then that then makes me feel happy.
mhm,
And that's what one of the things that I thought, where I was like, and each day is structured in a way that inevitably I feel just from my own life is like to be creative is to almost like mirror happiness, because once I've created the thing, and inevitably you're dealing with neurochemistry. Every emotional state is a precursor to neurochemistry, really, and that's all I think. So when I start like a picture or something like that, I've opened the dopamine cycle, and by the time I'm halfway through it, the dopamine cycle is active, and by the time I finish that picture, it's now complete, and now I feel happy, and it's that,
mhm,
and that's one of the things where I'm like, well, mixture between that and the existential notion of like, why am I here? And that's enough for me, personally. It's just like, I want to see how much I can produce, because not only that, like, I kind of feel like I'm making the stuff for me. Like I keep
mhm.
telling people, I was like, I can't wait for the Donnie movie to be finished so I can fucking watch it,
Yeah
and that's what it feels like. I can't wait to see this thing. Folk are like,
yeah
you've written it and you're making it. I'm like, I know, but it's not the same. It's no like, it's like do you know what it's like? It's like somebody building a house. It's like, I can't wait to live in the fucking thing. That's what
yeah
it's
yeah
like.
yeah
That's what it feels like.
yeah yeah definitely yeah. I didn't feel like I wanted Goodman to be finished until I got near the end, and as soon as I started to get near the end, I started thinking, yeah, I need it. I actually need it to be done now because I feel like it's been too long that I've been going through this. Like I said at the very beginning, without having produced anything for the last few years, you start feeling like I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just a guy who's making a film.
Yeah. So where are
But
you at
yeah.
now? So like, are you? I mean, talk us through. Where are you sitting with the Goodman right now?
So it's there's about 4 scenes left to film. There's not a
Right.
lot, but I still need to finish the big creature and go and do stuff with him. Again, like we're going full circle because it's a bit like Jaws, in that he's a big part of this film, the big creature, but you're not going to see him a lot during the film.
Right.
So if you imagine they made Jaws without the shark,
Hmm.
and now we're just about finished the shark, and we need to go and shoot the critical scenes. So a lot of it's going to kind of come together in those last scenes, and they are ambitious as well. There's a lot of things going on, so it's not like we could just go out and shoot them tomorrow, but we're almost ready. So I'm hoping that by like spring, maybe early summer, it'll all be in the can, and it's just a case of all the post production. So there's an assembly cut just now, which is about an hour and 40 minutes or something. So everything we've cut, edited down into a 1 hour 40 minute with soundtrack, with color grading, with a wee bit of sound mix. And it's looking happy with it. Like happy with the way it's looking and desperate for other people to see it. But yeah, it still needs a bit of finishing touches and it still needs those missing scenes, obviously.
Hmm.
Um,
I love how you totally capped yourself by expressing true emotion there. You're like, it's looking, I'm happy with it. Because I know that feeling. Like, you didn't want to be super exaggerative of, inevitably in private, you watch it and you're like, this thing's fucking shit hot, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, but it does look amazing. Like,
Mm,
and Sandy, cinematographer, has been, he's been on every single shoot and he's been at the top of all those mountains. And we've captured Scotland like in autumn at its very best.
mm,
And we got lucky with the weather. We did get unlucky with the weather quite a lot as well, and just couldn't shoot. But whenever it has been nice enough to shoot, we've gone out, we've filmed, and the stuff is like jaw-dropping. Like it looks, whether or not it cuts together to make a coherent story, that's different. But it absolutely looks fantastic. Like,
And what is the release
and
section? What are you going to do for like the release, like premiere and things like that? What are you thinking?
yeah, I don't know. I don't at the moment. Like I keep thinking I should probably have a better strategy for that. And I mean I know the things that I want, but I don't know if I'm going to get them. So we think we might go back to Cannes and talk to people, talk to sales agents, and try and see if we can get somebody who could get us into a festival that like it's kind of high profile festival and use that as a market to sell the film
Mm,
basically through the agent. So the agents they have these good contacts with the big film markets and they get the film in there, they get it screened, it wins awards or whatever, and then people want to buy it and that helps the sales agents, it helps you kind of creates a buzz behind the film, all that sort of stuff. So that would be an ideal route. You can go down that route without a sales agent, so you can just apply for these film festivals. But my experience with that is the film festivals that will take it are the smaller ones, like the
mm,
ones that are mostly the people in the audience are just film fans. And you tend to have more luck with horror films or genre films of really any kind, as long as it's a genre film festival. So this is I mean, it wouldn't be a tough sell because it's an adventure film with a wee bit of horror and a wee bit of like creatures and stuff like that. But finding a film festival that can fit that into their schedule and what they want to do might be tricky. Um, so regardless of what happens, I definitely want to go and take it to some festivals and do some Q&As and meet some filmmakers and just do some networking that way. But the other option is to self-distribute as well, so we can put it onto Tubi and Amazon and things and just see how it does. But that's kind of like a worst case scenario
mm,
of if you don't get somebody else to get behind it. So, um, like I said, Sair Ane had a distributor buy it, but so far hasn't done anything with it. Dick Dynamite had the distributor bought it and then has produced, physical media, did a theatrical release in Hollywood, and has had it onto all the streaming sites and stuff like that. So that's been a great release for Robbie. Really good result. So if we could copy something like that, that would be amazing.
mm.
It'll be tricky though because, and I was saying this to Sandy, it was just like yesterday we were sitting down having coffee. And I was like, look, there's no names in this film. Like there was in Big Dynamite, there was some famous people in there. There's just me. There is Clive Russell, who's well known, and there's Adrian Smith, who's pretty well known in the Warhammer world. So
Mm.
there's a couple of names, but there's no like, here's the star of the film type of thing. It's also not horror. There's no like sexy people in it, there's no salacious scenes or anything like that. So you can't market it that way,
Mm.
and promise people that they're gonna see nudity and all that type of stuff. So it's a tough sell, like, and I recognize that. But I also think like there's elements of it that people would absolutely really want to see, like the creatures, the scenery,
Mm.
the fact that there is a story behind this, where a historical imperative and it's an adventure story as well, which I've always got time for. So I think there's definitely big selling points, but it's just how the market, whether or not they want a film like this, I've no idea.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so there's a whole big bunch of I don't know. Like
Mm.
if we get lucky, it's like you say, if Hollywood come calling, then we'll go down that route. Otherwise, we'll go down. So Superterranean was completely self-distributed. Again, I didn't know what I was doing with that, but I got into a couple of festivals, and I hoped that throughout those, like at some point, someone would see it at a festival and they would come and they would say, "We want to distribute your film,"
Mm.
which I don't know if that happens, but it didn't happen to me. So I went and put that on there's a service called Film Hub, which has kind of changed a bit now to what it was. Now it's not as good an offering, I think, for filmmakers. But back then it was a wee bit more attractive, and I got into Film Hub and they put it up, and it got taken up by Tubi and Amazon and Apple and all those people. And there's DVDs of it as well, only in North America though. But
Right.
I keep meaning to buy the DVD and get
Definitely
the
buy a
shit
DVD,
over.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, I need to do that.
Yeah. I think as you mentioned how the last couple of scenes are like going to be relatively ambitious. Like, what's your ambition for the future? Like, what's your like end goal when it comes? Because inevitably you're working as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
Mm.
I would love like my I guess my most ambitious would be that we would be able to do this full time
Yeah.
somehow.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that looks like. Whether that, like in an ideal world, the way that looks is that you're financially comfortable and you could just go to investors and say, "Hey, it's me. Remember me? Give me money and I'll make my film." And they say, "Oh, yeah, here you go. Here's your suitcase full of money." Realistically, I think for the people who don't work and don't have a job on the side and make indie films, it's much, much more of a struggle. Like Sandy was telling me that Scorsese struggles to get his films financed these days,
Fuck's sake.
because he's an auteur and he's got his own very specific ideas about them, and they are going to cost an absolute fortune because he's
Mm.
Scorsese and he's not going to try and save money, and he's going to have big stars in his films. He's going to have DiCaprio or De Niro or whatever. So he needs millions, and it must be tough to raise millions, and we don't need that. We just
Mm.
need like 100 grand or something to make a feature film and pay everybody. But um, if I was to try and like quit my job to do that, we'd have to make like one or two films a year,
Mm.
plus be getting revenue from the films that are out there. Um, so realistically, like what our plan for after Superterranean is we want to make a film that is shorter, like much more condensed in terms of filming. So we want to make something that we can go and film in, I don't know, 10, 15 days shooting, something like that, and then just package that up and make it something that's really commercially viable. So probably horror, very
Mm.
gory, maybe quite fun as well, sort of a bit tongue in cheek, something that immediately you see it and you're like, I think I want to watch that.
Mm.
So we'll probably will do that, but it's something like the idea of doing it, I feel like you're not really saying very much. You're just doing something that you think is going to sell, and you're doing something that is going to be fun to make and it's going to be really fun to watch. But as a filmmaker, you haven't really said much. And Sair Ane is a wee bit like that. Sair Ane is kind of like, here's a bunch of stuff that I think horror fans want to see in a film. It's a bit
Mm.
of body horror, lots of gore, some nice kind of like build up attention and release attention and stuff like that. So there's one project that we're going to do, and we feel like we have to do, and pursue more of a commercial project, something that we think is going to pay us and is maybe going to continue to make money like for the next few years, and that'll hopefully give us a wee bit of a financial bed. And then at the same time, in parallel to that, we want to develop the third kind of big film, and attach someone to that film. So someone famous, not me,
Mm.
someone that can kind of sell the film. And then you go to the investors and say, look, I've got this person attached to the film. Give us some money, please.
Mm.
And then go and film that. And that will be the kind of next, I guess, bit more complicated film that says a bit more. And that's as far as we're looking at the moment.
Mm.
Like in an ideal world, yeah, would be doing this full time. But indie film is really tough right now.
Yeah.
It's tough, really tough to get investment from, like you're not going to get it from any of the funding bodies, the sort of
Yeah.
arts funding bodies and stuff like that. And to find angel investors or private investors, like I don't know what makes them tick really enough at the moment to be able to go and ask for tens of thousands or whatever. But the impression I get is that the indie filmmakers who are doing this kind of thing, they're just getting money from everywhere. They're getting £100 from the business on the high street, and they're getting like £500 from their auntie, and
Mm.
then they're getting 20 grand from like some investment capital people, and they just know how to they know how to sell it, like, and they know how to make a proposition, I guess.
Yeah.
And like I don't know how interested I am in living a life like that
Yeah.
and going around and knocking on people's doors and asking for money, but that might be the only way that the next film gets made.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I know that feeling. I mean, I've like for both, I managed to get for the CANNAMAN movie, I was able to get sponsors at the end, which essentially paid for the venue. So it
Yeah,
was like I got like five or six, maybe was it six or seven sponsors, and the agreement essentially was like 5 seconds of your logo at the beginning of the film. I think I was like 250 a time. That then covered the venue and the merch table, and I
yeah,
made like a couple hundred quid on the merch table. So altogether, I made probably like 300 quid, and it was like a year's worth of production for the film. Everything I
yeah,
use is free. Blender's free,
yeah,
GIMP
yeah, yeah,
software's free. And it's the same with the Donnie movie. Like I'm getting close, same again, 4 scenes to the end. Not a fucking penny is what the only money that's went into it is when I've been at work that day, came home and did some work.
yeah,
That's as close as it's got to being funded. And I think that's one
yeah,
of those things where when you're like a one-man army, it's one thing to create the thing, as we said earlier, but it's a whole nother thing to market the fucking thing. It seems
yeah,
like it's almost more effort because it's just so challenging. And I'd also share that same feeling of like, it's like you're going to with your hat in your hand. Like, because I tried to, they went through the fucking biblical application form for Creative Scotland and immediately got knocked back both times, for the
yeah,
Canavan movie and for the Donny thing. And it's really disheartening because it's a big application. You're there for fucking ages
oh
trying to
yeah,
fill this thing out, so it's frustrating, so I'm in a very
yeah,
similar boat where I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing at the end. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the funding bodies, they have a range of ways to turn you down, and there are different funds that are for different purposes. But yeah, like they almost all exclusively have very difficult criteria to meet,
Mm,
to the extent where I think they're almost impossible. And
yeah,
I think that's intentional, because they want to set almost impossibly high standards so that either only the absolute creme de la creme gets through, or more likely, I think they have an ideal about what they think art looks like,
hmm,
and what they think good cultural output looks like, and until someone meets that ideal, they just give money to their friends or something. Like
yeah, yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but I do know that virtually everyone I speak to is like, yeah, you're not getting money out of them, which
Yeah.
is so disappointing. And we did crowdfunding for the Gudeman, which is fine, but it's a lot of work, like, and it's a graft,
Mm,
and you don't know what to offer people. You don't know what to say about your film, and
mm,
there's definitely there are people out there that I've seen in the indie world that are much better at doing this and much better at drawing on these sort of social community revenue streams.
yeah,
But I just don't know how to really do it. And all I want to do is make stories,
yeah.
And it's like Stanley keeps saying as well. He's like, all I want to do is shoot stuff and make it look good. Like
Mm,
I'm just a camera guy. That's all I want to do. He doesn't want to like, and I absolutely like. I'm the same. Every time someone says, "What are you going to do to get this film out there?" or "What are you going to do to market the film?" or I'll do what I can because
mm,
I owe it to everybody that's been involved in it. But that's such an uncomfortable process for me. Like
yeah.
trying to kind of like like going online and just saying, "Oh, look at this! You've got to watch this film. It's the best film you've ever seen." I just can't do that.
Yeah, no, I know exactly the same. I mean, I do like I upload fucking like artwork every so often to just keep folk aware. Like this is it's coming, don't
Yeah,
worry, it's arriving. And I was contemplating. I mean, it's about 45 minutes in, content wise, and I was thinking about maybe I should make like a short fucking trailer or like to do that. But I don't want to show off any of the film yet. I don't
yeah,
want like it's like a premature thing kind of thing. And also, I was contemplating as well, like, should I do the same thing for sponsors as the last one? But I don't know if that will then put off potential bigger investors if I've then accumulated 4 or 5 fucking small time sponsors. I've really no
yeah,
idea, quite honestly.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know either. It's a world I've never been great at.
mm,
Steed's much better at this sort of thing. He's got so many so many contacts in his network, and he can put on a good show. But
mm,
then, like, that's his job. His job is going around the world putting on shows for people.
yeah. Is he not
Um,
fucking in Serbia, the new or something? Is that right?
Somewhere like that.
Yeah,
Like I've
yeah,
lost track of where he is, but yeah, he's always somewhere.
yeah,
He sent
yeah.
us videos for the last podcast from Paraguay, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely got an aptitude for putting on a big show
Mm,
and selling something. But I struggle. It's something I've touched on this with a lot of people. Like there's a few things I find that are really like consistent themes with like creative people and indie film people in Scotland. And one of them is the imposter syndrome, but the other one is this inability to pick up your own work,
mm,
like an ability to say, "Look, I made this, but it's actually really good." Like we just really struggle. We choke on the words, and
mm.
just like I choked on them earlier. And I don't know why it is. It's like it's a Scottish thing about we like to ban each other's work as well. Like we
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to people like to kind of if someone is like talking up their work, everybody's like, I fucking check him out. No,
Exactly. Yeah,
thinks it's
that's fucking.
fucking. So
Yeah.
it is tough, and we've done that to ourselves. But yeah, you just have to swallow it, I guess. And you almost have to just make another entity, like Square Go.
Mm,
Square Go can talk up our work
mm,
because it's not us. It is us, but
yeah,
we can pretend that it's not.
yeah. I mean, for anybody that's unaware, you guys have got a Square Go podcast. That's I'll put the link in the description below. You want to talk about that before we go?
Yeah, well, it was so the whole Square Go thing was about kind of pulling our resources together because we already worked on each other's films. There's four of us, me, Robbie Davison, Sandy Henderson, and Adrian Smith, and we all had our own films that we wanted to make, and we were kind of conscious that we were like helping each other out already. By virtue of I'd worked on Dick Dynamite and I was asking Robbie to help with my film. And we were both asking Adrian to participate, and Adrian was asking us because he's done this graphic novel. So he wanted our help kind of filming parts of that. So we thought let's kind of legitimize this a little bit and formalize it. And we created a limited company, more or less for the purpose of like being a kind of almost a one unit for the four filmmakers to put content out under and just create a brand, a recognizable brand. Was the point. And when we did it, we thought we should be reaching out as well. We should be trying to build our network, but we should be also trying to create opportunities for other filmmakers to connect with us or trying to create opportunities for other filmmakers to connect even with each other and all that type of stuff. We're not the only ones that have this idea. There's lots of people I see in the indie film world that are doing the same kind of thing. They're doing film festivals or they're doing kind of screening projects, podcasts, and it's all about the same thing. It's basically about us saying, we look awfully like an industry, but we're not really an industry. We're more like a community
Yeah.
because there isn't enough money really to call us an industry because we're not really employing people and we're not really doing things legitimately and totally by the book and with insurance and all those things that you're supposed to have if you're in an industry. But we're kind of just underneath that first level of the independent film industry world,
Mm,
and there seems to be no way to get from where we are up to where they are.
mm,
So by doing all this stuff, you try and kind of create what looks like a much more formal and legitimate um, actual first step of the industry that's comprised of volunteers or semi-professionals or professionals, but just a whole mix of people who are kind of they're getting it done one way or another, and then we can hopefully help get the pathways up to the next level, which is where you just get employed to do stuff. But the Square Go podcast, we started. we just thought like let's just talk shite about films basically, and let's give people our terrible opinions about movies that we love, and movies that we hate, and all that sort of stuff. And then someone had the bright idea of inviting people on that were connected with that world, that people um, around the indie film world, and trying to kind of build the network that way. And so that's become like I find that so inspiring to speak to other people who
Yeah.
have that same experience, they have the shared experience that you have, and also the same struggle. And you kind of you learn about people's projects, you learn how they're doing it, and yeah, so that's been magic, having that experience. But we try and shoot two at a time, so we'll try and get a guest in, we'll sit down, we'll talk about their projects, like their history, how they got involved in the industry, what kind of problems they face, what drives them, all that type of stuff, and then we record the next episode, which will just be us talking shit about films again. So it's kind of like, let's just have a laugh. Let's just talk about stuff we like, stuff we hate, and just be a bit kind of freer and looser with it. And so far we've made, I don't know, we're on about like 13, 14 episodes or something like that. And it's been enjoyable. We've enjoyed it, and the audience, I think, is slowly building, and we get some nice feedback as well. But more than anything, we're getting to connect out with people and make more friends in the indie world.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly the reason. If I'm being honest, Dean, that's I was hesitant about starting the podcast up again because I did that about 2 years ago,
Right.
and then when I was looking at the catalogue of people I was speaking to and stuff like that, and I was just like, fuck, I should do this again. But there's that resistance thing of that insecurity of like, should you do this or that? And the primary reason is exactly what you're describing, that you get to communicate with people because each one of us, 9 times out of 10, you're working a 9 to 5, so you're in this
Yeah.
different pocket. Your job's different from my job, and there'll be somebody else completely different. So there's all these individuals that are spread out across fucking like this working economy really, they all have a similar thing in common, and there's no way to kind of unify them,
Yeah.
and that's why it's like I really enjoy this. And I mean, most people that know me, like, I'm a relatively fucking manic person, like hyper verbal, I exhaust myself, man, but it's like
Yeah.
I'm coming to become fucking fuck it, this is how I am, and I think as well it's like it's a necessary requirement for what I'm making. Like I think if I was to just be super chill and relaxed and not manic, I would get nothing done, and that's fucking, so I need it. So I
Yeah.
really enjoy like conversing with people that have, like, I find people fascinating. Everybody's a like we're talking about story. Everybody has a story. Everybody is a walking around movie. Like you could take somebody that would seem that's just working in fucking Lidl's or something, and you take their life and add a soundtrack, and all of a sudden now it's a drama. Just from what
Yeah.
they've experienced, and even though it's just some guy serving you in fucking Lidl's. So I find it kind of fascinating that situation. But no, the Square Go podcast is quite honestly aesthetically appealing. Like your studio's cool as fuck. It looks nice,
Yeah.
man. So when you're watching it, it looks cool, and you have a really relaxed, you're friends, so you feel that comfort,
Yeah.
when you're dialoguing and just having piss taken and shit like that. You could feel you're ribbing each other. I like it, man. It's just I don't know
Yeah.
if it's a Scottish thing, but you certainly feel it when you're having a chat. It's good.
Oh, cheers.
So yeah, I mean, we've essentially covered everything, Ian. Is there anything you want to say before we get going?
Uh, there's nothing that springs to mind. I'm loving what you do as well, by the way, and the fact that you do it in Blender is mind blowing to
Yeah.
me as well, because I use Blender a lot, and I use it for creating models to 3D print, and occasionally like VFX elements and stuff.
Mm,
But animation is a whole different world. The only type of animation I've ever done was in Adobe Animate, and it was very like onion skin stuff and hand drawn.
mm.
And that I found really, like I said, really challenging, but really rewarding at the same
Mm.
time. So yeah, like I've got so much admiration for what you do and the way you do it.
I appreciate that, man. Let's say it's extremely archaic. One of the things that's just before we go is like, if I'm being brutally honest, this is one of those things where I don't even know what the style I do is called. Like I watched
Yeah,
this, I watched this, and it's just because I was like, I need to do it. So you begin to walk forward and you develop a skill and a technique of doing it, and then it's not till later somebody tells you what it is you're doing. People have done it before, and I was watching this documentary after I made the CANNAMAN movie. It was about 3 months after it, and I'm sitting there, and I was I was watching a documentary about behind the scenes for the Garfield movie, and so I'm just sitting there fucking eating my tea, and it came up, and the guy detailed 7 different forms of animation. And I mean, and he mentioned one which was required, and I was, oh, that's the one I do, and I've fucking still forgotten what it's called.
You're gonna
But
have to
it's
watch the Garfield BTS again.
I'm watching it tonight, 100% as soon as we're finished. But that's what I'm thinking is just like it's you just kind of get driven. So the method I'm doing is just you draw it, you scan it, you color it, and then I'm just putting up individual files. So I'm actually animating in the video editing part of Blender.
Yeah,
It's not even the fucking CGI or like all that, because
right.
that's I think inevitably the quality of the product will increase the moment I walk into that realm. But because it's so time consuming to do what I'm doing now, I've not had the opportunity to kind of lean into it and then kind of
Yeah,
develop progress with it really. But that'll inevitably come next. But I appreciate your comments there, man. That's really helpful.
cool, man. Well, thanks for reaching out.
No,
Been a
I
pleasure to
appreciate
speak to you.
I appreciate your time here, Ian. Let's say thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing the Goodman.
Aye, so do I.